super excited to talking to you today about wrestling, your career, and your background. And yeah, I was just saying how we have so many diverse athletes and sporters on the app, which is super exciting. But I want to give a bit of a background on your career, and then get into some of the questions that we have from our audience, as well as from us. We're super excited to be talking to you. So you are an American former wrestler, and you started your career in 1993 and wrestled with the Extreme Championship Wrestling, WWE, multiple experiences in those. And you've wrestled with like some of the biggest stars in the game, or in the sport, with the Matt and Jeff Hardy, and you retired just recently after a very successful career. So right now you are also have your experience store set up on the app. So anyone interested in requesting some experiences, whether those are a golf outing or gaming with you, or just looking to get some advice, that I think is certainly exciting to look back on your career and your expertise. So welcome to the show, and we're excited to have you.
Oh, thanks for having me. And, even though I had retired back in last year about this time, I actually come back out of retirement in January.
All right.
I've been wrestling. Yeah, I've been wrestling ever since. Once COVID pissed off in our area, we were able to get some shows running around May. I actually come out in like January.
Okay, awesome. Which area are you based in?
I live in North Carolina. It's eastern side of the United States. I live more eastern of North Carolina, more towards the coast.
All right, nice. And what sparked that comeback?
The reason I retired was a huge mistake. It was for the wrong reasons. But once I got away from wrestling and got my life together, I was able to see that I had actually missed wrestling and missed being in the business and the sport. So that's mainly why I came back. I was still in the best shape of my life. I just turned 50 years old, so I wasn't ready to retire, but I just did it for the wrong reasons.
Okay, so you basically looked at it, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to retire. I was like, okay, well, I'm ready to come back. So
right.
That's pretty exciting to be joining back into the sport. Has that longer pause? You've paused for about a year, right?
Like 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
Did you need to adjust anything? Did you need to do anything different from in between the retirement and the comeback, or how did you get ready?
Got my the physical part of it was never a problem. It was just getting your mental part straight, because this business will basically eat you alive to an extent. And that's why you hear a lot of wrestlers killing themselves, a lot of wrestlers just dying from taking so many different things because of how rough and physically demanding and mentally demanding this business is. And it was an every weekend thing with me. Even though I still held a full-time job and didn't wrestle full-time anymore, thank God, I was on the road every weekend, sometimes like 6-7 months straight without taking a break.
That sounds really exhausting. And
right.
I mean, obviously the physical part is something that you can see, as in the athleticism in the ring, and that's phenomenal. But that mental
right.
part is something that I think can get overlooked quite a lot. Do you do anything in order to prepare yourself mentally or to deal with that stress?
I actually have very religious based, so that's more how I'm preparing for it is praying and meditating. I picked up meditating and yoga, things like that, so it's actually able to calm me down before, if I get over anxious, or I suffered from anxiety. A couple years ago, I had a really nasty concussion, which is about my 23rd one, and started having anxiety attacks. So from those, slowing down, because the anxiety was taking control of my life for a little while.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, 23 concussions, that sounds very intense. Is there some sort of concussion protocol in wrestling, or are they like the NFL like 10 years ago? As in,
No, they're
yeah,
more like
we'll figure
they're
it
more
out.
like the NFL 10 years ago. There's no concussion protocol. And back when I was on TV and traveling more and being in, when I spent 7 years in Japan over there. And most of the time, like when I was at ECW and you were taking chair shots, Paul Heyman would get pissed at you for putting your hands up. So you actually had to take those straight shots through the head without blocking them. So they attributed to a lot of my concussions, and then just mishaps in the rings and things like that.
Wow, that sounds really intense in terms of how do you deal with a concussion then afterwards, as in ice and rest, or I
Just,
mean,
yeah, there's been so many different, most times you're not supposed to sleep. Now they're saying it's okay to sleep. There's really nothing you can do for the concussion except let the brain reduce the swelling of it. I think one of the
okay.
ones I got about 4 years ago, I had two cold Scorpio come off the top rope and set on my head in the match and knocked me unconscious for 7 minutes. And that kind of started because for 9 months, I had a stuttering problem and a memory problem. So every now and then, if I get too anxious or too excited or got too much going on, that stutter comes back.
Wow,
Yeah.
and you said that you are dealing somewhat with that through meditating and
hmm
through your faith as well.
Yeah, my faith has a lot to do with it, but meditating and learning how to control my breathing. And, I had one of my anxiety attacks about a month ago. He woke up in the middle of the night, and with that, controlling of the breath helps a lot with learning how to breathe.
Okay. And
Yeah.
I mean that's something that I think a lot of young athletes when they get into the sport, that those are aspects that probably they don't see as much, and where some of that mentorship can really come in and help as well.
Yeah.
And I know you're involved, you're mentoring, you're working with younger athletes as well. What's the number one advice that you give them?
If they want to be in this business, first to be humble, because this is a very egotistical business. A lot of them let this thing get too egotistical because they think it's more real than it actually is. And always be your worst critic.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, being a worst critic sounds like a lot of improvement, but that can also add potentially a little bit extra stress as well in terms of that. Oh, now I'm telling
Yeah.
myself I'm not good enough. When you were starting out, how did you even start wrestling? How did that come about? Like, take me back to that decision. I'm gonna be a wrestler. I'm actually gonna go pro with this. Like, walk me through
Uh,
that. How did you start,
it was
and how did
it
that
was
go?
never it was never nothing like that. I actually just started doing it to have fun. I was a baseball prospect coming out of school. I was supposed to play Major League Baseball. Then once that fell through, I had a buddy of mine that was wrestling around the independent circuits in North Carolina, and saw him at a restaurant one day, and I just got to talking to him, and he actually talked me into coming to the show with him. Got there early, got in the ring, rolled around a little bit, kind of got the bug, as they call it. And it kind of just took off from there. I never thought I would actually make a career out of it or get as far as I did in wrestling. At the time, it was just something to do.
Okay, so you just had some fun, and when did that go from okay, this is something to do, I'm catching the bug, I'm having a good time, to hey, I could make this into a career.
After about 3 or 4 years, once people started just telling me certain things, certain natural abilities I had in the ring with timing and things like that, I just kept getting those compliments every weekend or in different places. Then it started setting up. Maybe it could turn into something.
Okay, and obviously you've won a lot in your career, right? You global tag team championship, and alongside with Simon Diamond, and
Mm-hmm.
like, what is there any moment or any win that really stands out to you where like that's the one thing that I'll always remember, that I'll always cherish the most?
Um, maybe it's not the win. I think it's just moments that stand out
Okay.
the most when you hear the crowd chanting your name. There was one time I had like 3,000 people at a packed Hammerstein ballroom in New York, chanting my name after one of my ECW pay-per-view matches, the famous ECW arena, having them chant my name. I think it's more moments than it is actually wins, because it seems like with me being who I am, I lost a lot more than I won. Which wins or losses in this business, it doesn't matter. But I think it's moments, being able to be in locker rooms with certain people and being there with good friends. It's things like that you remember more than the wins or losses.
Okay, that
Yeah.
I mean, I can see that from an athlete perspective, as in it's that moment, that cherishing the
Yeah.
crowd, and that is much more than the winning itself. That's awesome. You just mentioned you've been in the locker room with a whole bunch of people, and you've really been, you've been getting, you met a lot. So if you could go into the ring tomorrow with any pro or any current or former wrestler, who would it be?
Kurt Angle.
Okay, and why?
I like his style of wrestling, which is wrestling, and I think he and I could actually have some really good matches. I've been in the ring with the best that business has to offer, and Kurt Angle, and of course Chris Benoit would have been another one, and Eddie Guerrero, but they're no longer with us, of course. But Kurt Angle is one of my top three. Him and Benoit are right there, 1 and 2 for me.
Okay.
But I just like Kurt Angle's style. I like Kurt Angle as a person, and I think just by talking to him and the years I've known him here and there, and watching him in the ring, I think he and I could really have some really good matches.
Against one another or tag teaming?
Yes. Oh, against one another, absolutely.
Okay. Who would be your tag team favorite?
I don't know. I've got, the guy I got right now, Preston Quinn, who was trained by my original tag team partner. He and I are really good. Simon Diamond. I think Simon Diamond has probably been my favorite because we had the best chemistry in all the years. All the years he and I were tagging together. Simon and I, for some reason, even though we had never tagged, once we started tagging together, it was like we had been together for years.
Okay, and that chemistry is something that I think obviously matters quite a lot in
100%.
in any sport, and
Yeah.
so it does in the ring. Okay, that
I had
makes a lot of sense.
At ECW, Bill Wiles was my tag partner. He and I love tagging with him. He was, again, Bill Wiles, Simon Diamond, and the guy I tag with now, Preston Quinn. They're my three, because all three of us have just amazing chemistry together. It's one of those where you don't have to talk in the ring because you actually know what the other person's thinking to some extent.
And that's awesome. And how does that chemistry from the ring transfer to, let's say, the locker room, or just in terms of like interpersonal connection outside of the ring?
The same way. It's when you have that kind of chemistry with somebody, you immediately get along with them backstage, because you have the same kind of interest to some extent.
No, that's awesome. Now, when we talk about personal, like, favorite partners and so on, when you were growing up, or what type of role models did you have? When particularly a lot of athletes have role models, like I want to aspire to this person or what they have achieved. And growing up, or like in your career as a wrestler, what type of role models did you have and did you follow?
When it was baseball, my idol, who still is Benito Santiago. He was a catcher for the San Diego Padres. That's who I was drafted for, the Padres in '89. Now, as far as wrestling, there's nobody that even comes close to beautiful Bobby Eaton, and sadly we lost him a few weeks ago. But Bobby Eaton was and will always be my idol. People can go on my Instagram and my TikTok and Facebook tribute I did for him, and think I've always talked about how much of an idol Bobby was to me. He's the only person in professional wrestling that the first time I went to meet him, I couldn't catch my breath. I was hyperventilating. He meant that much to me.
That's awesome. You had a little fan moment there.
Oh, 100%. Anybody else, I'm kind of a fanboy on the inside a little bit, but as far as Bobby, I couldn't breathe. I had to go in another room and collect myself before I went up and introduced myself to him.
That's great, and that's something that like whenever we meet someone who, like, we're looking up and we follow them, that's great that you actually got got to meet them in person as well, right? A lot of us are
Right.
looking up to athletes, and we have these role models that are amazing on the field. They're great off the field, and we never get to meet them, but you actually got to meet them, and that's pretty awesome as well.
Right. Yeah, it is.
We do have a segment which we call Pro Advice, where at Pro Advice, we ask our audience to ask the professionals some advice that they're just struggling with in their athletic career and so on. So we had 2 submissions that we want to share with you. The first one reads, I'm reaching a plateau of weightlifting. What do you recommend for me in order to really keep progressing?
Now, I'm not that great when it comes to fitness, stuff like that. I've only recently in the past few years got my body to an extent, and just from experience, most of the time what helps me and other people around me is to change what you're doing, because you work out but so much, you have to change going from different sets. Usually some guys they train body parts, one body part a week, and then some do split body parts, some do push-pull workouts. Right now mine's a little bit backwards to where I was doing arms and stuff at the end of the week, and it switched to the first of the week. So change those things up. And as always, like my good friend and one of my former students, Lodi, says, dieting is 80% of it. You can never outtrain, as he says, you can never outtrain a shitty diet. It's his words.
No, we'll keep it with his words, and I totally agree. As in that's the actual diet and that nutritional advice is certainly something that people should be seeking when
it helped me out a lot, because I've gone from 270 where I was at ECW, and I've always been around 240 most of my adult life since then. But right now I'm at like 216, and it's because of Lodi tweaking things and telling me, and also tracking your food. That's the one thing, apps, they have apps all for all that sort of stuff, but tracking your food has helped me tremendously. Especially in the past month, I've lost 10 pounds just on tracking my food, because I didn't realize how shitty I was eating certain ways.
Okay, I mean that's phenomenal. As in, even though you've been a pro wrestler for such a long period of time, that you can still make such big advancements in just in your training and in your overall 100%. Fitness.
That tracking my food has been the biggest thing in the past month, is the seeing. And it's also disheartening when in the afternoon you only got like 400 calories left to eat, and you're like, holy shit, there's nothing, there's 400 calories. So, but that helps you. It does help you maintain and stick to that diet.
It's like, okay, 1 banana. Damn.
Yeah, I'm done.
That sucks. And that may actually be the answer to our next question, which says, I'm undersized, but I want to hold my own against bigger guys. Should I focus more on technique or improving my strength?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, literally, that's all. Yeah, technique and strong. If you're weak, it ain't going to help you if you go against a bigger guy. And technique, that's why if you're watching professional wrestling, you can tell the guys that are really trained and the ones that are crappily trained, because it's technique. And I work out with one of my students, and he was just on here a second ago, Victor Andrews. He's been training me a lot because he's a former boxer. So we've been doing a lot of stuff, and it's just seeing, he's a smaller guy than I am, but stronger because of his technique and the way he delivers things.
Okay, and I mean, obviously size does play a role, but I mean the technique that makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
That's good advice. And so the answer to this is both. I like it.
Yes, 100%.
What's the one thing behind the scenes in wrestling that fans don't often see, but you think it's like, what, that's actually really interesting, that fans should probably want to see more, or fans would be interested in? What's going on behind the scenes?
Let me think about that for a second. There's something that the fans need to know, or something they all want to know. They all want to see the. Love you, Vic. I just saw you popped up, but They always want to see Oz behind the curtain. It's not as exciting as you think. It's a bunch of guys getting dressed, getting changed. But I think the one thing is some of the camaraderie with the guys. We may be in the ring not liking each other, but we definitely don't want either one of us to get hurt, and we're always big fans of everybody else's work. Guys will sit there and watch my matches backstage, and when I come back, it's high fives, stuff like that. And it's the same way with me watching other guys. I love watching younger guys that get it go out there and perform, and when they come backstage, giving them those compliments, because I remember when I was a young guy coming up and a veteran giving compliments to me, that's what it meant to me. Like when Bill Eadie, who was one of the Demolition Axe, I think he was in WWE, when he used to tell me how great my timing was, that was the biggest compliment coming from them. When Dr. Tom Pritchard told me not too long ago that I should be teaching at the Performance Center because there's stuff in tag team wrestling that I know that he's never even thought of. And he was the longest trainer at the WWE Performance Center. So when the guys tell you things like that, it's a huge compliment. It's a huge ego boost to an extent. Hey, I know what I'm doing. This makes me want to do this more. That's the thing backstage is when guys, we're looking to give those compliments, and a lot of us are just really close.
So there's a lot of support, so to speak.
100%. Yes. The older guys, and we support the ones that want to learn. You have the ones that think they already know it all and have it all figured out. Those are the ones we kind of stay away from. And it's the ones that come to us and say, CW, can you help me? CW, can you do this? Or let me know this. So those are the ones I'm willing to help.
No, that I guess that goes for a lot of sports, whereas you always have someone who knows it all, and those are the ones you're like, you know what, buddy, you can just get a bloody nose, and then once you figure out how to be a little bit more humble, we can.
The other thing the fans don't realize is how damn small a lot of times our dressing rooms are, and how we're crammed on top of each other to go out there and perform for them. Yeah, that's the other thing they ought to know is we're actually crammed into some of the dressing rooms, some of the places.
It's hot, you say? It's hot.
Yeah, some of the places are hot as hell backstage, and you're sweating before you even get dressed. So, yeah.
That's interesting. Those are some of the behind the scenes that I was looking for. The little nuggets that, as a fan, you never really know. Now, wrestling, you've been around for a long time. Wrestling has changed over the years. How has it changed in your perspective?
It's actually gotten worse to my extent. What I grew up and how I perform and what's shown today is not the same thing. Mine's more of a storytelling, how wrestling should be storytelling, and today's stuff is more about motion, more about moves instead of emotion to how it should be. Make the fans make it believable is how I was taught and how I was raised, and a lot of that's just not put out there today, in my opinion. And again, if people go, I'm probably the ones that the younger guys look at. I'm out of touch. I'm the older guy. It is what it is. It's my opinion. So it's just a little bit different nowadays. But the guys today are so much better athletes than we were back then, and I was. More athletic, can do way more things. I mean, some of them you're like, damn, I wish I was that athletic. But I mean, it's like all of them are a lot more athletic. That is the one thing that's changed. They're definitely more athletic than what we were.
Do you think that leads to more injury?
Yes.
As well?
Yeah, because you do more things. You're willing to try more stuff. And it always leads. It doesn't take much to get hurt in this business. I tore Dreamer's bicep one show. Myself, Simon, and Swinger in a wrestling match. He took a move and he took it 1,000 times from us and took it wrong one night and tore his bicep and his pec all through his arm. And it didn't take much. So the guys that are doing more acrobatic stuff, there's just more chances for injury.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That doesn't.
And I always tell the guy, you have a bump card in wrestling. That's what we call falls is a bump. And that thing's going to be filled up and you're done. And the more crazier things you do, the more you try to do in the match, the quicker that bump card's filled out.
I can absolutely see that. So are injuries just part of the game, or are they avoidable?
No, there's not avoidable. It's not how you're going to get hurt in wrestling. It's not when. It's always how bad you're going to get hurt. And from day one of wrestling, you're never not without an injury, and you're never not sore. I don't know what it's like not to wake up in pain.
Oh.
It is a constant thing. You know, I've separated my head off the axis joint. Blew my L5 and S1. Both my meniscus tore. I've shattered both my ankles, broke most of my fingers. I've had liver failure. Like I said, right now I'm battling with 23 concussions. You can probably see the scar right here. And if Vic is still online, he's the one that give it to me, my student. So I got that, and 10 years before that, I split it in Japan, where it went all the way through, where I could stick my tongue through. Missing a few of my teeth from them getting knocked out back here from getting clothesline and punched. Like I said, you're going to get hurt 100%. It's just how you deal with it.
Ouch. I mean, that long list, that sounded like I was.
Oh, that's not all of it, but it's some of it.
I was getting hurt just listening to that.
Yeah. I think the most painful was, I don't know if it was blowing my L5 and S1 and having to stay in a bed for 28 straight days, or the liver failure, which I did that right after liver failure. My liver failure, I lost 40 pounds in 21 days from it. That was in 2005. Broke my ankle on my 40th birthday. It was, yeah, like I said, it's how you get hurt. And the guys today, man, bless them, because they're risking their chances. But again, they're more athletic, they're more adapted to it, and plus they're younger. If I tried to do some of their things at 50 years old, hell, I wouldn't be able to walk at all.
So you're saying that they will have that wear and tear on their body even earlier then?
Yeah. Well, when I first started, I was doing, because I was such a fan of Bobby Eaton, I was doing a leg drop off the top rope. And at 260 pounds, it wasn't good for a fat guy to be doing stuff like that. So, because you're completely sitting right on your ass and it's compressing your spine. So I learned quickly to stop doing that. But the guys, yeah, they're doing more of the things. They're going to get it quicker to some extent, because when I started the wrestling wasn't as intense, and wasn't until I got to ECW. And once I got to ECW, then it just went to hell, because our style was just so crazy.
Now, living abroad, I mean, as I said, that sounds very painful. I'm like, why are you even doing this? But
glutton for punishment.
Now, when you lived abroad as well, how does that compare to wrestling in the US, wrestling in Japan?
Wrestling in Japan is fantastic. I wish I was 100% there right now wrestling, because I love how respectful they are. I love just the culture of the Japanese people. Love the country. It seems a lot of the American wrestling fans are spoiled, and we're the cause of it, especially guys like me that were from ECW that give the fans what they wanted and did everything to please them. It's just part of the business, but I love the culture of how they treated us over there and how we were represented, because for some reason, the Japanese style of wrestling, what they call the strong style, what I did in the mid 2000s, I seemed like I was accomplishing more in the ring. I don't know. I can't really hardly explain that, but when you got out of there, you felt like you accomplished something because of the way the fans appreciated you over there. And for any guys that's wrestled in Japan and been over there for a year or off and on, they know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the fans appreciate what you're giving them over there.
Okay, that's really interesting. And I know the Japanese culture is very respectful and supportive there. So
yeah. I love how over there, the Japanese people, they make you learn the language. You know, they'll cater to the Americans a little bit, especially if you go to McDonald's or Wendy's over there, you have an American menu, but most of the time you have to learn to speak the language to get around and to go, which I absolutely love.
So you speak Japanese then as well?
I'm not fluent. I'm not fluent.
You get by.
Yeah, you know, if you introduce yourself, you look at somebody and say, "Hajimemashite, watashi wa Christopher desu. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu." It's, you know, a little I picked up. And it's funny because I try to keep doing it. I talk to my fiance in Japanese a lot because it's one of those, if you don't use it, you lose it. So I teach her and I teach some other people, and I still try to use it as much as I can.
That's awesome that you stay on it for that as well.
But the key to learning more Japanese or learning the language is actually to be intoxicated a little bit, because in your brain the language slows down. Because that was taught to us by the Japanese over there, because they said we as Americans talk really fast. So when they've been drinking a little bit, they can understand us better because in their brain it slows down. And it's the same way when we're a little drunk over there, we can understand them better because they talk so damn fast to us.
Fair enough. Or it's just that perception as in, yeah, I get that, and then it just goes in here and out here, and
100%.
We do have one last segment that before I let you go, which we call the break the rules. So in the break the rules segment, we ask you to think about a rule change in wrestling that would make the sport better. Now, what that means in terms of better is totally up to your definition.
So what in wrestling a rule they should change?
Yes.
Well, I got several for baseball because I looked up. But wrestling, I'm trying to think of what they could actually do.
Baseball as well, if you like.
Baseball was wrestling. To me, it's a little bit harder for some of the rules that I think they should be changed, because it seems like a lot of them to me are fine. As far as baseball, I think they should limit the number of attempted throwovers to first base, to limit the time you get to stand out of the batter's box and look down the third base line, and limit the number of time as far as the pitcher. It's almost like how the free throw shooters get a 10-second count. It should be the same way for a pitcher, and especially if you limit the number of throwovers, I think it would speed the game up a lot, because I was actually, a catcher, and watching baseball is slow. Watching baseball is brutal because it's such a long game.
As a non-American, I would agree.
Yeah. And it seems like I see somebody posting it when it comes to professional wrestling, they actually enforce more of the rules like they're actually supposed to be, instead of being in on it. You give the guys a 5 count. They don't break it 5, disqualify them. A 10 count for being out of the ring, or 5 seconds for tag teams to get in and out. Actually, to get in and out, I think if they would more enforce that. And one of my loves, Carly, she's on here, Sahara. She's so beautiful, and she's such a talented wrestler.
Okay, so you get some community support even online here.
Yes, I do.
Awesome. That's great. And what you just mentioned in terms of reinforcing the rules, the original Uncle Pucks also mentioned that as well.
So that's where I got it from. Here. Yeah, that's where I saw it. Because a lot of times they don't enforce the rule. They get lackadaisical on them, and it just takes away from the match.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, and I mean, it, like any professional sport, I totally agree that the rules should be enforced. And like it certainly should be one of those cases where, like, well, that's what the rules are for, right? You want to govern.
That's why they're put there. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. That's pretty much. I want to be cognizant of your time, and we've gone over half an hour, but I really appreciate the insights. And as I said, with SPRTER, we're talking to sporters from around the world, learning from different athletes and sporters from really around the world, different sports, and really appreciate your insights. Also want to keep mentioning again that you have your experience store set up on the SPRTER app, so anyone start following CW on the SPRTER app. Check out the unique experiences that he's offering there, and also follow him on any of the other socials: Insta, Twitter, ECW Anderson.
Yep, everything's at ECW Anderson.
Everything's consistent, so that shouldn't be that difficult to do. So that I'm gonna check out that tribute you mentioned early on, and yeah, really, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks
Really,
for having
really
me.
appreciate the time, and we're looking forward to staying in touch. And good luck with the comeback.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
You as well.
Thanks.